It's raining! Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby. Today we're going to be starting on another reading vlog, and these are just going to be a bunch of like thriller and horror books that I meant to get around to in the year of 2023 and I just still haven't gotten around to them yet. The first book that I'm hoping to read for this video is going to be Vampires of El Norte, because this is a horror book that I've been really looking forward to reading ever since it got published, and especially because this book is in the top 10 right now for the horror category at the Goodreads Choice Awards, which just has me even more excited to check this book out. I didn't really know too much about this book, to be honest, other than the fact that this is the same author as The Hacienda, which is a book that I read earlier this year, and that this one takes place in Mexico in like the 1840s. It's definitely like more of a historical fiction, and I think that it involves vampires. That's pretty much all that I knew about it going into it. I'm also going to be reading Good Girls Don't Die by Christina Henry. This one is a thriller that says it's about three women who find themselves trapped inside stories they know aren't their own. I wasn't really sure what to expect with this one either, but this was one of my most anticipated books of the year because this is the same author as Near the Bone, which is one of my favorite horror books, and so I've just been really looking forward to reading this thriller from Christina Henry. I'm also going to be reading The Fiction Writer by Julian Cantor. I actually got an ARC of this one earlier this year, but this book actually just went on sale November 28th, so it is available now. And this one is a thriller that just sounds like it's going to be really interesting. We follow this woman, Olivia, who was like a once rising literary star, but her last book that she just published was a complete flop, and it was actually a retelling of Rebecca, was like her most recent book, and it was called Becky. And so now she's like really desperate for an opportunity. So apparently she gets a call from her agent that says there's this guy, Henry Asherwood, who's like America's sexiest man alive, and he's gonna be hiring her because he wants her to help him ghostwrite something. And it's so funny because he wants her to write a book about his late grandmother's surprising connection to the author of Rebecca. This one has one of my favorite book covers that I've seen in recent years. I don't know what it is about it. I'm obsessed with this book cover, so that's also a huge part of the reason why I want to read it, and also just because I love reading thrillers that are about writers. Like, I just think that's so much fun. Like, I love reading books about books. And then the fourth thing that I'm going to be reading for this reading vlog is Out Behind the Barn, and this one is actually a horror novella. I didn't originally plan to read this one this month, but after my December TBR video, I actually pulled the prompt of like reading a book between 90 to 180 pages, and I decided to go with this one, and I'm glad that I'm finally going to get around to this because this is a horror novel that I've had on my TBR for like this entire year. This is another one that the premise doesn't really give me anything with this, so I'm jumping in knowing absolutely nothing. I had only heard about this book because I think that I saw Kayla over from Books and Lala. She read it somewhat recently, like in the last year or two, and from what I remember, I think she really enjoyed it, and it just sounded like something that I could like, so I added it to my TBR, and here we are. So yeah, these are the four books that I'm going to be reading for this reading vlog. Let me send you back to when I started it about a week ago. To update you because I have started on Vampires of El Norte, and I just hit chapter 10 of this book. I'm about 109 pages in, and you know, I started this book not really knowing anything about what this is about. And this one has been super interesting so far. It actually takes place in 1840s Mexico. It's not oftentimes that I read books that take place in the 1800s, so it feels very historical. The writing was a little bit of an adjustment at the beginning. Like, it's hard for me to get into historical fiction sometimes, and I definitely struggled with this one a little bit at the beginning. But now that I'm into it, I am so invested. And in this story, we're following from the perspective of two different characters. We have our female protagonist, her name is Nena, and then we're also following from the perspective of this guy named Nestor. And basically, when these two were younger, it's unclear to me if they just like had feelings for each other or if they were like actually together. I'm not really sure, but there was some kind of thing between them. He thought that she died from this like monster attack. I don't really fully understand like what these monsters are, but the way that it was describing these monsters was so creepy. Bent-legged beast, the likes of which he had never seen before. Its human-like head was a mouthful full of teeth. Its face was wrinkled and hairless and mottled gray. Like, it just sounds so creepy. And then he goes on to say that it had no eyes. Very, very creepy. And so he watches as Nena is attacked by this monster, and he thinks that she dies. Like, he assumes that she dies, and he grieves really hard over her death. And then that's like only the intro scene to this book, and then we flash forward 9 years later. And so now that it's 9 years later, it says that our characters are now 22 years old. So that's why I was a little bit confused, because I was like, oh my gosh, then at the beginning of the book they were only like 13. So I don't know if they were actually together or not. But it's really interesting because in the present day chapters that are now taking place in 1846, which is like 9 years later from the events at the beginning of the book, there's a situation happening where there's gonna be like an invasion, or there's like a war that's gonna be happening. And so they're gearing up for that to potentially happen. And they said they need like every able-bodied man who can help needs to be helping. And so that's kind of why he comes back to this town where she's living, and he doesn't know that she's still alive. And it's been 9 years. I think the writing in this book has been really atmospheric and beautiful so far. I mean, like I said, it did take me a minute to get into the book because the writing style was very historical and just kind of like tough for me to get into at first, but some of these quotes are just beautiful. The writing in this, when she says, anger lifted in her chest like an October storm, with wind like the lick of a whip, with crackling, with the promise of thunder. I love when it says, memories of him circled her footsteps like hungry curs. Every shift of the trees whispered his name. Every turn of the wind carried his voice. Like, I just love the way that this author is writing this book. I think the writing itself is like very atmospheric and very interesting. I've also been learning some new things because they use some words that I had to Google. Like, for example, the word vaqueros. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry, you know, I am Mexican, but I butcher Spanish like you would not believe. But I think it's pronounced vaqueros, and those are actually cowboys, which I think is really cool. Like, I didn't know that. And so even the little description on the inside of the book here says vampires and vaqueros face off on the Texas-Mexico border. You know, I really didn't think that this was going to be my thing at the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. I was struggling a little bit to get into it, but now that things are happening and like the way that these two have finally, like, we've finally got to the scenes where like they've seen each other again, they know each other exist, which that's not any spoilers, by the way, because it all talks about this in the blurb of the book. Now I'm just really curious to see where it's gonna go. Because I had no idea really that this was gonna be a Western and that it was gonna be like a vampires versus cowboys situation. It just sounds really interesting, and I'm actually really invested in the characters, especially in the romance, which I remember saying that about the Hacienda. I remember saying that I really liked the romance in the book. I think this author does a great job of writing some really intriguing romance. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm excited that this is going well. I think I'm going to head to bed for now, but I think I might try to finish this one up tomorrow. Next morning, I've had a very chill start to my day. Been reading Vampires of El Norte all morning. I'm now 245 pages in. So I only have this little section left here, and I feel like this book is going okay. Like, there's been some things about this book that I'm really loving, and then some things about this book I'm finding to be a little bit slow. Like, I don't know, right now I feel like the pacing is a little bit slow to the point where like I keep getting distracted, and then like I'll have to go back a few things in the audiobook to like make sure that I am comprehending what I'm reading. I don't know, it's like I'm finding myself getting very easily distracted right now in the story, which I feel like that just means the book is not really pulling me in the way that it was last night. And again, I feel like this probably also has to do with the fact that this book is really outside of my comfort zone as far as like the historical fiction feel of it goes. I remember feeling this exact way about the Hacienda, where I'm like, it's really well written and it has really great characters, but there's something about the writing, like the historical feel of the writing, that makes me feel bored sometimes, and my brain just like shuts off and like stops listening to the audiobook, which is not like a great sign to me. But at the same time, hi Tank. Just decided to make his entrance. because he wanted to let you know his thoughts about this book. But yeah, I don't know. I have such mixed feelings about this book because I do actually like the romance that's happening in this book between these two characters, but at the same time, I feel like this book is almost doing the like midnight is the darkest hour thing right now, where like the romance is really front and center, and there's not that much going on in the book, at least right now at the moment in time where I'm at. I'm just kind of feeling like the story is dragging a little bit because the romance is so front and center, and we also do get quite a bit of flashbacks to when these characters were younger, and sometimes if I'm not paying close enough attention, I'll be like, wait, are we like, is this a flashback scene or is this a present day scene? I don't know. It's like I like their romance, like I do ship it, like I'm into it, but at the same time I feel like there's a lot more romance than I was anticipating, which is making me feel like kind of bored. Like I just want to get back to like the creepiness, because I like the idea of these like vampires and the creepiness of like the creatures in this book. Like it's very intriguing in that way. But I don't know why, there's something about the writing specifically, like the pacing is just really slow and it's dragging a little bit for me, which is making me sad, because last night I would have said this was feeling like a 4-star book, you know, but right now at this moment in time it's feeling more like a 3-star. So I don't know, I guess it really just depends on how these last, I don't know, 100 or so pages go. I mean, it's still so early in the day right now. It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. This morning I just made a quick breakfast. I just had granola, and then I finally made those like Korean pancake things that I got from Trader Joe's that I've been wanting to try, but I accidentally burnt them because for some reason in the pan, I think there was like leftover oil or something in the pan, so the pan was like way hotter than I wanted it to be, and it like charred one side of the pancake. But also those pancakes, oh my god, they were so much sweeter than I was expecting. Like I really only should have made one. Like 2 is like too many. It was very sweet. Like it was so good. Like don't get me wrong, I've never tried anything like that before. It was freaking delicious and so good. I just wish I didn't burn it, and I probably only should have made one because it was really sweet. I don't think it's like a breakfast food, because when I was reading the bag, it was saying that this is like a traditional snack in Korea, or probably even a dessert, I don't know. But because it was a pancake, I was like, oh, it's breakfast. I don't think it's breakfast. It was very sweet. It tasted like dessert, but it was so good. So I can't wait to try those again. If you have a local Trader Joe's, you can probably see if your Trader Joe's has them. But anyways, I think I might get ready to head out. I might try to go to the grocery store, and I have a few things that I need to pick up. But I think all the while that I do stuff today, I'm just gonna try to continue listening to this on audio and hopefully try to finish it up. How am I supposed to get anything done when this little guy just wants to sit in my lap? Look at that face. Could you say no to this face? I am back home from grocery shopping and doing all of the things, and I just finished listening to the audiobook for Vampires of El Norte. And you know, I've gotta say, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by this book. I don't think it was exactly what I was expecting. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's just like some kind of disconnect with like me and this author, because I kind of feel the same way about this one as I felt about the Hacienda. I think I did end up giving the Hacienda about like 3 stars, and I feel like I'm probably gonna end up giving this one something similar, because I can recognize that these are not like bad books, you know, like they are good books that are well written, they have interesting characters, but I think there's just something about the writing in particular that makes me feel really bored sometimes. And it's probably due to the fact that this writing feels very historical, and you know, like a lot of her books are very historical, so this is not a her problem, this is a me problem. I just don't think that I'm like the perfect audience for these books. I also just think that the romance in this book, like while I did enjoy the romance, there was just way too much of it, I thought. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because it's not like I was against the romance or anything. I guess with this book being a horror book, I was just expecting a lot more of like the horror and the vampires, and I don't feel like personally I got nearly as much of the vampires as I was hoping for in this book. I mean, I liked these two characters together and I thought they were really fleshed out, interesting characters, but at the same time, like the romance just started to bother me the more that it was getting brought up again and again and again. It was like, oh my god, I get it. It's just, I think it's about my expectation when I read books in the horror genre. I'm not expecting them to be so romance heavy, even though I do like romance and I'm a romance reader. But I think another thing about this, why maybe I wasn't connecting with it as much, is because I'm not a big fan of like the childhood friends to lovers trope or the like second chance romance trope, and those are like the biggest romance tropes that are happening in this book. So that could also be part of the reason why I didn't love the romance in this one as much as I loved romance in like other horror books. I don't think I really liked this one as much as I liked the Hacienda, but they're still kind of like forgettable stories for me overall. I just think this book is being possibly like slightly mismarketed a little bit with being put in the horror category, because the horror elements of the story really feel like they're happening in the background, and at the front of this story it's really this kind of intense family drama and like family story and a romance between these two leads throughout the book. So I don't know, it was just a tad bit disappointing, but I think I'm going to go ahead and start on Good Girls Don't Die next. This is by Christina Henry. Okay, hello. It's been about 24 hours since the last time that I updated this vlog, but I wanted to update you because last night I started on Good Girls Don't Die by Christina Henry, and I got to part 2 of the book, which puts me at about like 97 pages in. I'm really sad to have to say this, but I think I might actually have to DNF this book, which is a shock, you know, because I really thought that this one could have the potential to be a new favorite. Like, the premise just sounded really interesting to me, and because Christina Henry is an author of, you know, Near the Bone, like a few books that I've really enjoyed, I'm just shocked that I'm really not loving this. And in this story, you know, as I mentioned, we're following from the perspective of like 3 different women, and it says, we follow 3 women who find themselves trapped inside stories they know aren't their own. And I was like, what does this mean? And so part 1 of the book, we're only following from the perspective of one woman in the first part of the book, and then we just hit part 2 and it's changing to the character Allison. And so I wasn't expecting like this entire chunk to be so boring, only following one character so far. And I feel like the thing that's bothering me about this book is that in part 1 we're following this character named Celia, and like the first scene is her in the kitchen and she sees this little girl who like she doesn't know who she is, but clearly that's supposed to be like her daughter. And then she sees this stranger man who's like her husband. He says he's her husband. She doesn't know who these people are. And so this whole first part of this book, it just felt so repetitive to me because she just keeps going, oh my god, like what am I doing here? Like where are my memories? Like just try to remember. And it's like so repetitive. Like it's just that basically like 100 times over again. And I'm just not as obsessed with the writing style. Like it's just reading like a very generic thriller. Like I feel like I've read a ton of books like this. I was flipping through the book and I noticed that each section of the book is divided into the different women's parts. So like I have a feeling that this next section with this woman is just gonna be the same shit, where she like can't figure out her memories and it's just so repetitive and boring. And you know, I was reading some reviews on Goodreads, and a lot of Goodreads reviews were saying that the ending of this book was like super underwhelming and like disappointing at the end. And I'm like, if I'm finding it to be this repetitive and boring right now, then I can't even imagine how I'm gonna feel by the end of this. And so like, I don't know if this is a DNF forever or if this is just a DNF for now. I have way too many books that I have on my December TBR that I want to read before the end of the year to be pushing myself through boring books like this right now. You know, like usually I probably would try to give this more of a chance, but like we are approaching the end of 2023 and I have so many books that I want to read this month, so this one is just not doing it for me right now. So sadly, this one's gonna be a DNF for me. You'll have to let me know if you have read this, if you think, you know, the rest of this book would be worth it, or if you think it's interesting, or if it does something different than every other generic thriller, because right now it's not really feeling like it's gonna do that for me. But anyways, I'm not too sure which book I'm gonna read next, but I did want to let you know that tonight I am so excited. I'm getting ready to meet my parents. We're going out to dinner to one of our favorite Mexican spots tonight, which I'm very much looking forward to because Mexican food is always a win from me. And then I'm so excited because after the dinner, me and my mom, we're gonna go see the Beyonce concert that's in theaters right now. You know, Beyonce has her like Renaissance tour. She's bringing it to cinemas. And so I'm so excited because Beyonce, oh, Beyonce's my girl. I've been a fan of Beyonce for like so many years now, but especially since seeing, you know, like her homecoming concert that she did that was on Netflix, like that was so great and so much fun. So I cannot wait to watch the Renaissance concert in theaters with my mom. I think it's gonna be such a fun time. I cannot believe how freaking cold it has gotten in Washington in these last few days. Like, oh my god, it is so freaking cold outside tonight, and it's like raining, but it looks like it might be cold enough that it could potentially turn into snow, and I'm like, it is way too soon for this. So that's why I had to put on, you know, like the thick sweater, even though I'm gonna be in a movie theater. I know it's not exactly convenient, but it's way too cold outside right now to not be like bundled up completely. It's raining! It's raining! Wow, you can really see it on the camera. So excited.
To it.
It's great. All the
Parking lot's full.
Yeah, the parking lot is
We actually
freaking
have to
crowded.
do a 10K to get over there. But it's worth it.
We have
for
to
her.
take a hike in the rain to get to Beyonce. It's fine.
Worth it.
It's
We're
fine.
gonna enjoy it.
Hello, it is the next night. Last night, me and my mom went to that Beyonce concert, and dude, it was so freaking good. It was so inspiring. It was so beautiful. I've been a fan of Beyonce for such a long time, so it was just so incredible. Like, I really wish I could have gone to the Renaissance tour. It just hasn't worked out. Like, I haven't been able to see Beyonce live yet, and it makes me so sad. But the concert was amazing. I cried multiple times. I didn't know that it was gonna be like partially kind of a documentary and then partially like a concert. So it was really cool to see a lot of like the behind the scenes and like her bond with her daughter Blue Ivy. Like, oh my god, it was so beautiful and it was so great. We had such a great time. Last night when we were driving home, there was such an insane like rain windstorm happening last night. Oh my gosh, like it literally woke me up at 3 in the morning last night. The rain was like slamming against my window so loud. But anyways, I've had a pretty slow start to my morning because I was feeling kind of like crampy and nauseous when I woke up. I ended up going to the gym this afternoon though, which was really nice because I definitely needed to go to the gym. And while I was at the gym, I was able to start on the fiction writer, and I'm already 82 pages into this one. This one is actually really interesting because, you know, we're following this girl who was like a once rising literary author because she had a book that was super successful, but then her last book that she just published was a bit of a flop. And it's interesting because she's in a situation where she like really needs money, and she gets this job where she's gonna be a ghostwriter for this guy named Henry Asherwood, and he's kind of like people's like sexiest man alive. Like, he's like a really big deal, and so she's kind of like wondering like, why would this random man hire me? Like, how does he even know me? Like, it's kind of weird. A lot of this book takes place at his Malibu estate on the California coast, so this one has really good like California coastal vibes so far. It's really funny because the reason why he hires her to ghostwrite this book is because he's convinced that the author of Rebecca like stole his grandmother's life story. Like, he's like, my grandmother is Rebecca, like that is her exact life story, and the author Daphne like stole my grandmother's story. And she's like, oh, okay. So she's like reading the diary entries that the grandmother had left, even though they're in French, and he says he's translated them into English, but like, I don't know, he seems kind of sketchy, but I'm liking the vibes of it so far. I don't know, I love thrillers that follow authors in this way. I think it's super fun. Anyways, tonight I have some Patreon reading sprints. They're gonna be starting in about 40 minutes, so I'm gonna make a quick dinner real fast. I love this Trader Joe's chicken chow mein. It's like one of my favorite things, so I'm making that really quick so hopefully I can eat before the sprints start. But I think I should be able to make a pretty good dent in this tonight, if not be able to finish it while on Patreon sprints tonight. So let's see. Okay, hi, I just wanted to do an update because I have just finished The Fiction Writer. I'm actually still doing reading sprints right now on Patreon. I think the most positive thing that I can say about this book is that it is so readable. Like, it reads so fast, which is something that I really like about thrillers. I love that there's very short chapters in this book, and the pacing was always well done. Like, I felt like the story was just really moving quickly, which I really liked. I think I'm probably gonna end up giving this one about a 3.5 out of 5 stars because there were some things that I really liked about this one, and then there were some things that I wasn't the biggest fan of. I mean, like I said, I found this novel to be pretty entertaining. Like, it was a quick read. I read it all within one afternoon, like no problem. And I also really just love reading books that are about writers and like books that are about books. And the fact that this is kind of like a retelling of Rebecca is just really interesting to me. But I also think one of the negatives for me with this book is that I feel like I've read this book before, because this book is so similar to Verity by Colleen Hoover. I mean, both of these stories just feel so similar to me, you know, because we have this guy who like had this wife that like something happened to his wife, so he hires this woman to help ghostwrite a story, right? Like that's essentially the plot for both of these books. They remind me a lot of each other as well because there's like romantic things that start happening between these characters, like between the men and then the women that they hire to like ghostwrite the stories for them. There's definitely like romantic subplots happening in both of these stories. And I personally feel like the fiction writer, it feels like Verity. It feels like a more vanilla version of Verity if it took place in California, like on the coast. And not to say that any of that's a bad thing. Like I actually liked, you know, Verity was like a 5-star book for me. I had a really fun time with Verity, so I didn't mind the fact that it reminded me a lot of Verity, but I just don't think that this book ever got as entertaining or chaotic as Verity did. I feel like this book was actually a lot more predictable, and even though I did really like the epilogue of this book, there wasn't really anything in this book that really shocked me. Like everything was pretty predictable with like where the story ended up going. This book is also reminding me a lot of The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins, even though I still think I liked this one slightly more than this one, but I do think if you liked The Wife Upstairs, you might like this one as well, because again, in both of these stories, we have a really rich man who hires a woman who's like down on her luck, and then there's like suspicious things about his previous wife, because you know, in the fiction writer, there's all this mystery about his wife because apparently his wife had like died in this car accident, but there's like some speculation with like people speculating online like, but did she really die, because I could have sworn that I like saw her on the beach. These definitely have that in common as well, which I think is really interesting. I think this book is actually a retelling as well. Yeah, it says this one's like a retelling of Jane Eyre, so like the fact that this one's kind of a retelling of Jane Eyre and then this one's kind of a retelling of Rebecca, I thought that's really interesting. And if you were wondering, I have not actually read Rebecca. I actually tried to read it a few years ago now and I ended up DNFing it. And so I don't know if this would be like comparable to Rebecca or not. I mean, I'm sure that it is because it's like a retelling of Rebecca, but I feel like this book would probably definitely spoil quite a bit of Rebecca if that's something that you're worried about. But I don't know. I feel like also one of my biggest issues with this book and why I can see so many people being frustrated with this one is because our protagonist, Olivia, she is one of those protagonists who just really ignores red flag after red flag. Like she is just ignoring it because this guy, Henry Asherwood, is just so hot. Like he's just such a 10 out of 10. He's like the sexiest man alive, you know, like he's just so beautiful that she like can't say no to him, and she like ignores all of the red flags, even though this man is given like literal red flag after red flag. And there's so many scenes where you're like, don't do that, Olivia, or like, what the heck? And she just continues to like be annoying and like not follow her gut. So like I could see how people would be really annoyed with her as a character in this book. Like I thought she was like fine. I don't know. I feel like this thriller, it's not like the best thriller that I've ever read, but I wasn't mad about it either. You know, like it was fine. But would I really recommend this one? Probably not. Like I wouldn't recommend it because I would definitely recommend these other two thrillers over this one for sure. But if you're looking for something, I guess, that has similar vibes to these two books, I think I would recommend this if you're looking for something that's like an easy, quick read thriller that takes place in California. I would just say lower your expectations a lot if you're gonna read this. But yeah, overall, it was a good time. I'm glad that I finally read it. I mean, this is the thing I've enjoyed the most so far in this reading vlog, so I'll take that as a win.
As a kid, I used to live out by a lake, lightning bugs, collecting sticks, and secret handshakes. I was invincible then, my heart so pure I had no fear. And those were the years that I hold so dear.
Okay, hi, I am back with the final update for this reading vlog because I have finished Out Behind the Barn. This was, you know, a horror novella. It was only 100 pages. I read the first 60 pages of it last night and then I was just too tired to finish it, so I ended up finishing the last 40 pages this morning. And this is one that I went into knowing absolutely nothing. Like, I feel like the premise on the back of this book doesn't really give you anything. It says that there's two young boys and there's this woman named Miss Maggie, and it says Miss Maggie is carrying something long, the weight of it stooping her aging back, and she's like carrying a body into the barn, and the boys go, "She got someone!" And it says both children grinned and settled into their beds, their eyes fixed to the ceiling. This was family growth. and that's like all you really know going into it. I was like, what the heck does that mean? And basically that's what this story's about. It's from the perspective of these two young boys. There's this woman, Miss Maggie, who has captured a new person and brought them to the barn, and they like see that there's like a big like bruise or like a big mark on the top of this girl's head, and the little boy's just like, oh, she must have used the hammer on her. The writing of this was really interesting. Like there was a lot of moments that were just kind of like creepy. Like one of the first sentences in this book is when the little boy is like staring at a spider that's on the ceiling, and it says he wondered if one night the spider might drop and crawl down his throat while sleeping, but he didn't have the heart to end its life. Oh, okay, like the visuals in this were really creepy and really well done. Like it had this very creepy undertone to the writing for this whole book that I really loved. I don't want to say too much more about the plot because, you know, it is only 100 pages. I think that's all you really need to know going into it, because a lot of this book is this mystery about like what the heck is actually going on this farm and like what is she doing with these people. I will say that this book went in a direction that I was not expecting. Like when the reveal came, I was like, oh, like okay, like that's where we're going. Like I'm not mad about it. I didn't see it coming. The authors could have added even more to the ending because for some reason the ending felt a little bit rushed. The reveal came so late in the story, and then I felt like the ending was a little bit rushed with things. Like I would have just liked a little bit more. It's really interesting though, because I read the author's note at the end of this book, because this book is published by two different authors. In the author's note, they said that this started out as like just a very small idea. Like the one author, John, he had written this as like a 3,000 word, just like a baby little story that was meant to be included in like an anthology of some kind. And so he said after so many times that this story got rejected, his friend Chad, who's like another author, reached out and he asked if maybe he could start adding some more ideas and they could lengthen this story to be a little bit longer. And they ended up writing over like 15,000 words they added to this, and it ended up becoming the story that it is, which I think is really cool. Like I love when you can have like one little idea and then turn it into more of like a novella length kind of story. And to be honest, I almost wish like they could have made this even longer, which is something that I don't usually say, but I really do think they have some interesting characters here, and I really like the direction of like where the story ended up going. I just feel like I needed a little bit more. So I do think I'm probably gonna give this one 4 stars. Like it wasn't a new favorite horror novella for me, but I definitely like what's happening here. I think it's really interesting and it's really creepy and weird, and it's just the kind of things that I tend to like in horror novellas. It's wild that this is the book that I ended up enjoying the most in this video. Like that was not expected at all. If you're wondering, I was originally gonna try to read Sisters of the Lost Nation during this vlog as well, but this is another one that I got about 80 pages into this book before I decided to DNF it for now. I don't know if it's because I'm just not in the mood for this book right now, or if it's just because I wasn't a huge fan of the audiobook. Like the girl's voice on the audiobook was kind of driving me crazy, and I was just having a really hard time getting invested in this story. So I don't know if this is going to be a DNF forever, but I decided to have this one just be a DNF for now because I just couldn't get into it. And you know, like I said, I have too many books that I'm trying to read before the end of this year to try and push myself through books that I'm not really enjoying right now. So if you were wondering why this book wasn't included in this vlog, I know I mentioned in my TBR video that it would be, but that's why it wasn't included. I'm just not as into this one right now as I thought I would be, but I know a lot of people said that they really love this one, so I do still want to give this one a chance at a later time. It's just not going to happen in this video. So yeah, of the 4 books that I read in this vlog, I do think Out Behind the Barn is probably my favorite of these 4, which was a little bit unexpected. It's kind of heartbreaking for me that Good Girls Don't Die was a DNF, but you know, it is what it is. If you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts on them. What do you think? And if you plan to read any of these books, I would love to know that as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!